Welcome to Arggon National Laboratory on Instagram Live. If you didn't already know, today is International Women's Day. International Women's Day is one of the many celebrations that happen during the month of March that have to do with Women's History Month. For today's conversation, we're going to be discussing what it takes to bring gender equity to our workplaces. To have that conversation, we're going to have several women that work within the DOE complex, within the Department of Energy complex. One person from Anne-Marie Horowitz is going to join us from the Department of Energy, Kirsten Lauren Kovitz from Arggon National Laboratory, and Margaret Kocherga from a incubator called Chain Reaction Innovations. So Margaret Kocherga is founding director of and CEO of Light and Charge Solutions. It's a startup company that she formed in 2019 to address the need for customizable, durable, and reliable electron hole transport materials for manufacturers of organic electronic devices. She's going to be on in a couple of seconds to explain what that is. I don't feel like I can do it justice. Kocherga received her PhD in nanoscale science from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Her focus was organic, inorganic hybrid materials for the next generation of organic electronics. And without further ado, I see Margaret has joined us. Let's go view. And Margaret should be joining us in a couple of seconds. Let's see if technology has our back. I think it does. Hello, Margaret.
Hello. Can you hear me well?
I can.
Yay.
I think we are. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I read your bio a little bit, but I don't think that I think it's more appropriate if you go ahead and just introduce yourself to our Instagram Live audience and tell us how you came to work at Arggon and more specifically Chain Reaction Innovations.
Yes. So let me give a little bit more background. I started my science career after sort of a career-threatening injury in being ballet dancer in a professional ballet. So I didn't grow up being exactly a scientist. I'm turned into scientist later in a career, so I'll probably address that a little bit more later. I also have bachelor's in chemistry, and my chemistry background was mostly focusing on heavy metal coordination chemistry, specifically mercury, and addressing the toxicity of mercury. And my PhD, as you have heard, is in the area of organic, inorganic hybrid materials that could be used for consumer electronics. And during my PhD, I discovered that in my research, I'm doing something very, very important for the industry right now, and I could be solving problems already and in providing safer, more accessible consumer devices that we use in our everyday life, like your cell phones and your watches and computers. There's just so many of them. And as I was starting my company, there came up the opportunities like Chain Reaction Innovation Program. There are multiple sister programs and a couple of national labs. And I decided to take a chance because I was graduating to a pandemic. I applied in 2019 and I formed my company in November of 2019, not really expecting anything bad happening, obviously. But I decided to take a chance, not really thinking that I'll get the opportunity to come to a national lab and work on my own startup and develop the technology. But if you don't try it, you don't get anything, right? So that was my theory, is that I would just try, put my best foot forward and apply and go through all the interviews. And I ended up actually getting to the program among other 5 entrepreneurs. And what this program does, Chain Reaction Innovations, it pretty much brings entrepreneurs like me with our own startup technologies related to energy innovations and brings them to Arggon National Laboratory to collaborate with the scientists and the great tools that Arggon has and the minds and everything, and gives us access to accelerate our development to make sure our technology gets out of the lab. Since I am coming from academic background, academic technology, it's very common that everything just kind of stays in those papers and the publications and never really reaches out to the public. So my goal is really take that knowledge that we developed in academia and with help of a national laboratory and an opportunity like that to bring it to public and bring it to an actual product that people would be using in their daily lives. So also Chain Reaction Innovations provides a great sense of community And being a CEO is a very lonely place. There's not a lot of people you often can just chit chat and talk to and catch up. So it allows us to come together as entrepreneurs, as CEOs, talk about common challenges, overcoming these challenges, including the diversity and how to move forward, how to make a safer life, safer environment, and things like that.
That's perfect. Actually, that's a perfect segue, to my next question, which is, so you mentioned that you started a business, Light and Charge Solutions, and that you're founding director and CEO. And you touched on it a little bit earlier in your description, but I want to unpack a little bit more about what need your company feels. And you mentioned a little bit. I just want to unpack that just a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't want to throw everything at once. So the main idea that we have is currently there are multiple issues in the world. A lot of you understand that there's a great CO2 impact that a lot of companies have on the environment, and they actively try to address that decrease of the CO2 emissions impact, as well as there are multiple sourcing issues right now that we're going to be seeing, not immediately, but in about 30 years from now, we'll start having a significant decrease in resources for a variety of elements. And unless we act today to try to change how we make our electronics and switch to organic materials that are earth abundant, that are also safe at the same time, that could be either biodegradable or recycled in a certain way, we won't have a fix 30 years from now, and it'll be too late, because at that point we won't have the right resources. It takes a really long time for technology to really mature and come to what it needs to be ready for consumers and operate properly. So what we're doing with our materials, we're trying to address the need and replacement of these rare, expensive, and sometimes even toxic materials with earth-abundant organic materials, and in that sense addressing the environmental need in that sense, as well as at least 30% of our waste stream is electronics, and it's only going to continue growing. So if we have a bunch of these toxic elements just sitting around a landfill, this is not going to be good. It's already not good for us. So switching to a more safer, greener type of electronics would definitely be helpful for environment, for us, for our future, and that's really the main need, without all the fancy words of what exact fix it is just trying to provide safer future and more accessible devices for us.
So I want to thank you for providing that overview, but we didn't talk about this previously, but when you say organic materials, I'm thinking about, are we talking about bacteria? Like what? So if you can give us an idea what type of organic materials that you're working with to go into our future electronics.
Yeah, so by organic material, I mean the fundamental definition of organic chemistry, meaning that things are made of carbons, nitrogens, oxygens. So basically whatever your body is made out of mostly, right? Your natural things that you make in your food and your apple, things like that. This is what we mean by organic. So these are materials that are made of carbons, nitrogens, oxygens, sometimes a little bit of other things, but they're very easily found and earth abundant. A lot of my materials currently employ silicon, and we have sand everywhere, right? We've been working with silicon for a really long time. So this is what I mean by organic.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. I was a philosophy major. I can talk about absolutely anything. Do I understand it all? Absolutely not. I'll move on. Okay. So you're a scientist and a brand new entrepreneur. What is one of the biggest lessons you've learned so far?
So as of now, I would say taking risks is one of the biggest things that I've learned, and embrace being different. You being different is actually not a disadvantage, but advantage for you. That if we all, as Kristen was saying, if we all came from the same background, same training, there's very low likelihood of being able to come up with diverse solutions and fixes, because sometimes you think in things in certain ways,
and you don't see some of the blind spots because you're just so tunnel vision on your exact solution, and you may not look at the other roads versus somebody who had different experience, different background, different training. That'd be like, oh, wait a minute, there's a different path right here we could be taking. So this is something I understood, not super early on, right? Kind of going into that stigma and trying to just kind of fight it head on. But instead, I agree. I say, yes, I am different. I'm an international person. I'm a female. I'm a young female. And there are views that I can bring that you don't have, even though you've lived on the earth for 80 years old. But my experiences are different than yours, and it's worth listening to them as well. So once I kind of understood that, and I just decided to accept that, yes, I'm going to be different, right? I'm not going to go and rebirth myself into a different person. It becomes a lot easier psychologically to deal with a lot of challenges that come your way, because they will be coming, right? We're not saying that the ride will be smooth, but understanding that factor is really helpful.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. Life ain't easy, but having a firm foundation. I mean, I believe myself that having a firm foundation in who you are and the value you can bring kind of wipes a little bit of that negativity that other people might throw at you. It makes it a little bit easier to weather those storms. My next question is, you talked a little bit about Chain Reaction Innovations, the organization under which you started working at Arggon. Let's get back to that. Let's talk about what Chain Reactions is and how they're helping you to form your company.
Yeah, let me take out my headphones. For some reason, I disconnected. Hopefully, the microphone's still working fine. Yes, so for Chain Reaction Innovations, they are doing a lot more than I probably know myself. There's a lot of behind the scenes, because they're not only helping us to access the national laboratory, they're also providing us funding through Department of Energy. So it's not only that I got access to the tools, I also got some grant funding to actually help and make progress with my business, being able to hire somebody to work and help me further develop the technology. And they also make connections even as far as investor connections, and trying to create a more global community. So they're not just focused on Chicago area, right? I was based in Charlotte, North Carolina. So their focus is not only to develop the ecosystem around Arggon, but actually make it a more global impact and reach out past Chicago. We have multiple innovators that are outside of Illinois area. And it is a great opportunity, because maybe if not Chain Reaction Innovations, I wouldn't be able to sustain a company, especially in the middle of a pandemic, as what has happened to a lot of companies. And startups are doing a very, very important role that big industries can't address for a variety of reasons, not because they don't want to. It's very risky, right? Startups do take on the most risky challenges and the newest developments. This is very inefficient for a big industrial company. So we need to be supporting more startups to bring those brand new innovations and help them to accelerate and reach that big industry level, to quickly de-risk them, make them reliable technologies, reduce their costs, so we can quickly bring them to the more global goods, right, to the consumers. And that's what Chain Reaction's focus is assisting us as entrepreneurs, assisting our companies to make necessary connections, to make necessary safety nets for us, to help us to move on and focus on really developing the company, really developing our technology. And they're really great at it. And we definitely need to have a lot more programs like it. There are a couple in the United States, but there definitely needs to be a lot more to make a significant impact and really make a difference, because, like I said, not every technology will succeed, but if we don't try, we need a lot of different options. We saw that with the COVID vaccine research, right? We kind of took it globally, and everybody decided to really push their effort and try to do it. And only because it was just so many scientists trying to work on it, we're getting vaccines now, right? So, but we need to not wait for emergency to happen in order to start acting on it. So having programs like Chain Reaction Innovations and creating more of these programs and making them multi-statewide programs is going to really help us have a much greater future, much faster.
Right. Right. I want to thank you for providing those insights. I mean, having known the individuals within Chain Reactions and Innovations, also within Arggon's S&TPO realm, they have this phrase, which they lovingly call the Valley of Death, which is where I got a great idea. How do we get it to market? You got to go through this Valley of Death. So I say that to mean that Chain Reaction Innovations is that bridge over the Valley of Death, if I can say that.
Indeed, because right now our startup at a point where investors won't invest yet because it's too risky. We have proof of concept, but it's not enough for them to really put their dollar and expect us to succeed. So without grant funding, government funding, national lab support, it becomes practically impossible to work on something as time-consuming, energy-consuming, finance-consuming as advanced technology developments. It is expensive.
Right. And in addition, I mean, you made this point earlier, you fell in love with chemistry. Okay, I'm going to take all the chemistry classes that I want. Oh, I love this subject. Cool. And then somebody's going to like, okay, well, why don't you start a business? How? Right? How do I know that I can get in contact with the national lab to, sign up for a program? How do I know what business class, So, I mean, I just see a lot of pluses for a number, and I just like for, I mean, you're doing an excellent job, but I just want to reiterate that for people that are researchers wanting to go in the STEM fields, people that see themselves as scientists and entrepreneurs, there are opportunities out there for you. Sometimes it means you got to do a little hard work yourself to find out what those are, but I'm sure that there are organizations within your university or within your community that can help you start thinking about, okay, I have this great idea. How can I bring it to other people to change the world in my own small piece? Moving on. So in your opinion, as a scientist and entrepreneur, what is the importance of diversity?
I would say, to not repeat myself, right? Because different backgrounds is definitely something that brings different points and things like that. But once again, being different is not a disadvantage, it is advantage. I'm currently trying to make a hire myself, and I make a significant effort to make sure that I reach out myself to different groups of people, different types of people, different backgrounds, different nationalities, because we all have different experiences. I don't need another me in a company. I need somebody who has a different point of view that can put a counter argument against what my thoughts are, and we can both come together to the right decision, the right solution, the right course of actions. And the diversity really brings out important points, such as we all live in different countries, different areas, different lifestyles. So if we only, as businessmen, if we only create one type of solution for one type of group of people, well, even as a business person, this is not a great thing to do. So, and how can I know what somebody with a different background will need? I don't. I haven't lived their life. So having somebody with a different point of view, with a different experience, different background, would help me to make sure I can address the broader amount of people, the broader amount of communities, and really help my product to succeed and reach out. That's from the business standpoint. From a scientist standpoint, like I said, diversity is always great because our minds are wired differently based on what our background was as a child, what our background is and experiences are as adults. So we think differently. We have different goods and bads about ourselves. Like, I don't like writing. I just don't like it. And then, so that means I have to find somebody who might be very good at writing, or somebody who enjoys learning how to write, or something like that, right? So it's acknowledging first what my flaws are, and also seeing what other people can bring to the table. What I also try to do is people need to be aware of maybe bringing a third person, because it is natural for humans to have sort of expectations of somebody, right? So you may be dead set on a certain thing and not really realize you're doing it because they're just what your natural instincts are. So having a third party is often helpful to see some of these bias that you might be imposing, not knowing even, and kind of have your a little bit open mind and understand, well, maybe you didn't actually treat this person fairly, or maybe you didn't really try to make sure that your team is diverse. So that's another thing that I wanted to point out.
I always have a third party, yeah. I did. You talked about a couple of examples of what you're doing personally from an entrepreneurial and a scientific standpoint of things that you're making yourself aware of, especially in terms of hiring and bringing diversity to your own business. What types of actions can we be taking within our organizations writ large to increase diversity? Does it just come down to hiring? Are there other options?
It is a very complex question, and it needs to be solved in a complex manner as well. Just having women conferences or attending as businesses, it's not really going to help. It is educating everybody, from whether you're male or female or non-binary, is educating about some of the challenges that the other party is facing, some of the worries, kind of what Anne-Marie had brought, that she said, well, there are maybe women with children, or they wanting to have children, let's say 10 years from now, and they're thinking about their career, and they think, well, if I become a scientist, I might not be able to have that, so I may have to choose a different career path. So ensuring that there are possibilities to have life outside of work is definitely very important, and will only enhance the businesses, the science, and everything, because if we can enjoy our lives and enjoy our favorite thing that we love doing, like science or whatever have you, then we can definitely make a greater impact. And second thing is, don't be afraid to ask questions. A lot of people, I don't mind people asking me certain questions about their uncertainty, about how to treat something, or how to treat me as a woman, entrepreneur, a scientist, and I'm okay with voicing my opinions. Some people may not be, and you have to be respectful of that as well. You have to be ready to have somebody say, no, I'm not really comfortable talking about it. But there are people that are willing to voice their opinions if you just ask. Sometimes it's really hard for me to just bluntly come up and say to you, right? I can't just come up and say, what do you think of women in science? I can't just quite do that. It's not going to be very appropriate. So it is then on the opposing party to be open to the conversation and say, hey, do you mind kind of sharing your opinion on such and such issue, how we could be more accommodating, or what do you think we're lagging? So there should be that continuous conversation in that loop system, whether it is women in STEM or people of color or non-binary LGBTQ. It's just trying to understand both parties, what are perceptions of each other and how we can fix it and become a little bit more global in that sense. So this is something that I want to enhance, especially, and making sure that we make a hardcore reach. Don't just put out an employment commercial, right? Hey, we're hiring. You have to actually go out yourself and say, okay, here is a female organization. Let's go ahead and make sure that opportunity is sent to them. Or, hey, this is a community of people of color. Let's make sure we send them the invitation, they get it. So that's another important point, is just expecting things to happen will never change anything. You have to actually put your sweat equity into it in order to see a return.
That's such an important point. We got a communication about something. Okay, well, have you reached out to the targeted communities that you know might be interested? Very important. My last question for you is, what advice would you give, say, either a young person or a 13-year-old Margaret Kocherga? What advice would you give them insofar as wanting to be a scientist or entrepreneur?
I'll start from slightly a different, because we kind of touched on the group of people that desire to be scientists and kind of lose it along the way. To those people that know already, hey, I really want to be a scientist, let's say they're in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, whatever it is, to not be afraid to ask questions and reach out. Most universities have high school programs that allow you to come to labs and actually shadow or even do work yourself. So that will help you to learn a little bit better what you're expecting out of your job, as well as you'll start forming some kind of network and team to help you. So really try to seek support system. we have already heard today multiple support organizations, I would reach out to those because this is a great start. That it is a like-minded community. It's much easier for you to integrate yourself into, which I didn't do. It made my life a lot harder. So I really recommend that if you actually know what you want to do.
Well, that's a great learning experience too, though.
Yes. And I'll also like to speak to those that, like me, didn't dream that since they were 3 years old to be a scientist. My dream was to be a dancer, and it just life played out in a different way. And there's also stigma that you can't be a scientist unless you start very young and you spend your whole life doing those science Olympiads and competitions and extra trainings, which I've done some competitions and things like that. I've studied well, but it wasn't my goal. So it's really important to understand you can make a change. At the end of the day, we're all still to go to the same college, sitting through the same classes, trying to learn all of these subjects and all of these rules and everything. So don't be afraid that even if you're 30 years old and you're not happy in your career place now, and you discovered a new passion for yourself in science, don't be afraid to click that switch and say, I'm going to try to apply to community college. I have a community college background, and I'll tell you, it was a great experience. It really helped me navigate my life. So that's a great starting point, is just don't be afraid of change. I've changed between being a dancer to being a scientist to being a businessman. So, hey, you can do it too. So don't be afraid of change. Seek support system. Yeah, try to find the communities that you think might be helpful. Since you're new, people expect you to not know things. So keep that in mind. Yeah, say, hey, I'm new to this. So then they kind of have that alert. Oh, they might not know how things are working. So there's that sort of expectation that you might be not knowing some of the things that are right, wrong, what have you. It is normal. It's like you went to a brand new cooking class you've never done, cooking your favorite soup, but you want to do it, right? You're going to be taught what ingredients will be going into, how to do it, and things like that. Same thing with science career. If you have the desire, there are tools to help you learn. It won't be easy. It is tough. It is tough for everybody, whether somebody was born with the mind of an Einstein or somebody who had a B's and C's and decided, hey, I might contribute to a scientific community and actually bring greatness to it. So if you have the hard work, the passion, the persistence, you will get to where you want to be.
Excellent. I think that's perfect. Well, thank you, Marggon Kocherga, for joining us for our conversation today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Most welcome. All righty. Remove Marggon Kocherga. Okay, perfect. I want to thank everybody who continued to stay with us today. We had a wonderful, fascinating conversation with 3 women that work with the Department of Energy Complex. We spoke with Kirsten Lauren Kovitz on the topic of what Arggon is doing insofar as gender equity. And we talked with her about some of her ideas and so far as reaching that equity. We talked with Anne-Marie Horwitz from the Department of Energy, and she let us know about all the different resources that the department has insofar as, if from grade school all the way up to current workforce, if I'm interested in STEM careers, what can I learn that the Department of Energy has to offer? And lastly, we spoke with Marggon Kocherga from Argon's Chain Reaction Innovations Program about her own experiences about being a woman in science. A lot of inspirational messages came out of this conversation today, and it's apropos because it is International Women's Day. But just getting us out there and starting to think and have the conversation about gender equity, that goes a long way to making it actually happen. So again, my name is Justin Bro. I work for Arggon National Laboratory in the Communications and Public Affairs Department. Thank you for joining our conversation today, and you have a wonderful International Women's Day.